Hey guys, there's a leaked police report out from Mexico which explains some of what happened in the death of Shanquella. We kind of figure out some of what happened. For these 6 individuals to get on a plane and come back to the US, there must have been bribery involved. But who bribed whom? How did the money split? And where did the money come from is the question. So let's look into this police report that was supposed to be leaked out of Mexico. But there's such a discrepancy. In the autopsy report, it says she died 15 minutes after the neck injury, the broken neck. But then the doctor was working on her for almost 3 hours. So did the doctor not, was she not aware that she had already died? I mean, that's to me a very valiant effort. If you know someone expired a whole 2.5 hours ago and you're still working on them, that tells me that you are really dedicated to bringing this person back. Was that the case? Or was the pronunciation of death all wrong? Was it 15 minutes? Or was it 2 hours? Was it 2.5 hours? That's the question. So if the doctor worked on her, Dr. Carolina, if she worked on her for almost 3 hours, why did she not know that this young woman expired a whole 2 hours prior to her working on her? Because when she came on the scene, about an hour after Shanquella had passed, according to reports. So by the time and according to the coroner's office, she expired 15 minutes after the neck injury. So when Dr. Carolina came on the scene, she had already expired. Allegedly. As a trained professional, wouldn't you know a person died by lack of vital signs? But Dr. Carolina said her vital signs were stable. So guys, you see the discrepancy. Now, it was put down on the death certificate, alcohol poisoning, because all the friends who were there said that she was drinking excessively. The doctor put down alcohol poisoning on the report. The autopsy report says alcohol poisoning. But when the body was examined, it was found that there was no alcohol in her system. So why did the doctor put down alcohol poisoning? If someone was drinking a lot, excessive drinking, you don't even have to do a toxicology report to know they were drinking. That alcohol will come right through their breath. You can smell it. So what I'm gathering from all the reporters and all the reporting is that the family had Shanquella's body flown back to the U.S., where they did an independent examination of that body and found that she had no alcohol in her system. This is what I'm gathering from everything that's coming out. So the toxicology report from the medical examiner found that there was no alcohol in her system, yet the doctor, Dr. Carolina in Mexico, put down on her reporting that she died of alcohol toxicity. The friends said she had alcohol poisoning, and the coroner in Mexico put down alcohol toxicity. So you see the cover-up. So first of all, she should not have been moved. When the friends, whoever picked her up and put her on that couch, they further injured her neck. And the doctor, Dr. Carolina, in one of the reportings, it was reported that the doctor said her neck was unstable. In order for her to determine if her neck was unstable, she must have attempted to lift her neck up, which would further injure her neck and sever that vertebrae. And so it is just injury upon injury. So at this point, I'm wondering, was the cover up to protect these 6 individuals who were her so called friends, or was it to protect the villa? I am more likely to believe it was the villa because these police officers or first responders, the doctor as well as this municipal personnel that was on site, allegedly, they don't have a vested interest in these 6 individuals. They don't know them from Adam. However, they are in Mexico where they probably know the villa owners. They know that their country depends on tourist money. And so, in order to keep the tourism at that particular facility going, I would think that they would want to protect that establishment if monies were exchanged. And this is all allegedly, but I can see some official at the villa saying, listen, I'm going to give you some money, sweep this under the rug. And I can really see the doctor saying, okay, I'm going to list it as alcohol toxicity, although I know it's not that because I did not smell any alcohol. And she does have bruising all over her body, a black eye, a busted lip, so she must have been beaten up. But let's sweep it under the rug. Let me get my little money, and let's call it a day. On the other hand, her family said there was money missing from her account. Someone used her card. This is all alleged. And somewhere in the neighborhood of $10,000 was missing. Did these individuals use her card? Talking about the 6. Did one of them use the card, obtain $10,000 from her account, and pay off these officials? We don't know because it all happened in one day. Because by the next day, they were back in America. They did not stick around. They were supposed to be there an extra day. And they left the day after this killing went down. So it is so sketchy at this point, but it's all going to come out in court. So there's a big discrepancy between the medical report from Dr. Carolina and the autopsy. One say 15 minutes she passed after the neck injury. Dr. Carolina is saying a whole 2.5 hours. So now the police department in Mexico is saying the reason why they did not investigate is because Dr. Carolina signed off that she died of alcohol toxicity. And the 2 officers that were there, they were medical responders. Their job is not to investigate. Their job is to observe the scene and report back. And if they find something foul, that's when the police officers would be dispatched to investigate. But to me, that's counterproductive. Why would they send out? They've got to change that system of first responders, because the first responders, really, if they come out just to survey the scene and report back, by the time they get back to the police office and the real police officers come out, the investigation team come out to investigate, the scene could have been tampered with. Stuff could be moved. Evidence could be destroyed. So what good is the first responders? They've got to do away with the first responders. Send out the real investigation team right away. Right away, like they do in America. When a crime is perpetrated in America, police officers come out and they start an investigation. You do not send out police officers just to observe the scene and they can't do nothing. They can't make an arrest. They can't even write a report, because it's been reported that first responders in Mexico can't even write out a report. So this is why nothing was documented by them. These two officers that came out, and they are with the first responders, they could not even do a report. All they could do is stand there and observe the scene. What good is that if evidence will be destroyed? Now, because of these first responders, and they could not investigate, they could not write a report, they could not arrest anybody at the scene, although they saw with their own eye that this child was beaten up, Shanquella was beaten up. They couldn't do anything but report back to the office to get an investigation team out. By that time, the next day, these 6 individuals hightail out of there. They're booked, okay? This is what you call book. Back in the day, we call that when you book, that means you are gone. You split, sayonara, arrivederci. I see you when I see you. They left the country. And that's what happens when you have first responders coming out and can't do nothing in a post on investigation team coming out from the get-go. And they can make arrests, they can write reports, they can secure the crime scene, because at that point, that was a crime scene. And they can make sure that no evidence is tampered with. So the doctor, Dr. Carolina, lied by omission. The coroner lied because had the coroner did a toxicology report, that office would not have put on alcohol toxicity. They would have seen that there was no alcohol in her system, because when Shanquella's family did an independent autopsy on her and they did that toxicology test, they found that there was no alcohol in the system. So the autopsy said she died of dislocation of the atlas. And guys, the atlas is that vertebrae in your neck. So guys, all the reports are talking about she died of severe atlas injury. So I looked it up. And according to Google, it says the vertebrae, which is in the neck, because you know your vertebrae is your backbone, and that runs all the way up and down your spine, your spinal column, in other words. So when they talk about the atlas, they're referring to the 7 bones of the neck, which is known as the cervical vertebra. And it is called the atlas, the first 7 bones, right there in the back of the neck. That is called the cervical vertebra or the atlas. And it attaches your head to your neck. And 2 of those bones were completely severed, broken. So she had an internal decapitation. If you were to cut off a person's head, that would be a decapitation. That's external, because you can see the head rolling. It's cut off. But this is an internal decapitation where the bones were completely broken, so her head was not standing on its own anymore. There was no support. In other words, she was unable to hold her head up. And this is why they said she had an internal decapitation. So the FBI got involved and Interpol got involved, because for a lot of us, we've never heard of Interpol. But Interpol actually is an agency set up to deal with international crimes. As in this case, this crime happened on Mexican soil by Americans. The Americans came back to their country. Mexico could not get to these individuals, but they could only get to them through extradition by working with the U.S. government. And so Interpol is the mediator. That's the agency that takes the information from one jurisdiction to the next. They are talking to the Mexican authorities, the American authorities, and coordinating what is going to happen. Where do they go from this point to the next point? They cannot make arrests. Interpol does not make arrests. But what they do, they coordinate how these countries can proceed in extradition issues. So let me read the definition of Interpol. Interpol stands for International Criminal Police Organization. It is commonly known as Interpol. It is just an abbreviation. It's an international organization that facilitates worldwide police cooperation and crime control. The headquarters is in France. It was founded September the 7th, 1923 in Vienna, Austria. What is the function of Interpol? Interpol provides investigative support and secure communications between law enforcement and their counterparts in 190 countries. So I believe it's 196 countries to date that are a member of Interpol. So not every country is involved in Interpol. So some countries a criminal can go to and it would be a safe haven because Interpol is not there to coordinate with those governments for extradition. Again, Interpol is an international police organization that coordinates between governments to get criminals extradited back to the country in which they did a crime. And so if you're criminal minded, you try to find out which country can harbor you safely. And again, Interpol does not make arrests. They're just an agency that coordinates between governments how to extradite individuals who have done something that is criminal. So let me remind the folks, the YouTubers, of the friends who were there. Khalil Cook, because it's important to remember these names. You got to say their names to put them on blast. Khalil Cook, Winter Donovan, Alyssa Hyatt, Malik Dreyer, Daejhanae Johnson, Nasir Wiggins. Now that was the Cabo 6. Now the Cabo 4 are the professionals who omitted or lied on their report. The first one is the Dr. Carolina Beatrice, who is a doctor at American Center Clinic out there in Mexico. And then there's Omar and David, who are police officers at the Los Cabos, Mexico Police Department. And the final professional person who was there was an agent of the public ministry, and his name is Julio Daniel. So these four individuals are being accused of either lying or omission, not putting stuff down in their reports when it was clear to see what was wrong with this young woman, Shanquella. It was clear to see that she had a bruised face. She had black and blue marks all over her body. She had a busted lip. She had head injuries. She had black and blue eye, and nothing was put down in the report concerning these obvious injuries. And guys, it's going to be really hard for these 6 individuals not to get stiff sentencing because they stood around and watched this young woman deteriorate on the couch before they actually called for help. And when help did arrive, which was the doctor, Carolina Beatrice, she arrived from the nearby hospital, or some reports said it was a clinic, and she worked on her for almost 3 hours, according to reports. And it is just puzzling. How could she miss that this young woman had already expired? Because the coroner report said she expired 15 minutes after the beating. Dr. Carolina got there a good hour after the beating. So there's no way she could have missed that his child was lifeless, unresponsive, and no vital signs. But yet, Dr. Carolina said she had vital signs. So I'm just trying to put the pieces to the puzzle. If you're a doctor, you get on the scene, and these 6 friends told you that their friend is in a drunkard, stuporous condition. She was drinking too much. Would you not smell her breath to see if there's alcohol coming from her breath? So I guess the doctor took their word for it because she put down on her report alcohol toxicity. So the doctor put down in her report that she needed an IV because she was dehydrated and her vitals were stable. This is when she got there. She got there an hour after the beating, and the coroner's report said Shanquella died 15 minutes after the beating. So the two are just not adding up. So it's alleged that a friend, Winter Donovan, who put in the call for the doctor to get there, is the one who said, treat her right there. Don't take her to the clinic for any further treatment or /hospital for any further treatment. Treat her right here. So at this point, I'm wondering who is the doctor here? When a doctor comes to examine a patient, you don't tell the doctor what to do. The doctor have to look, observe, diagnose, and come to a determination of what he or she is going to do. But a lay person does not tell the doctor if that person needs to be transferred out or not. That's what a doctor is trained for. That's why they went to medical school, to make that determination. So Dr. Beatrice Carolina said she gave the IV without success. Well, you want to tell me there are no veins in her body that were to be found for that IV to go into? Because you got a lot of veins all over your body. And if one don't work, you do it wherever you can find a vein. And for her to try without success only tells me that, of course, there were no veins popping because there was no blood flowing, which means she had already expired. So Dr. Carolina said she tried for about an hour to give her an IV. When she arrived a little after 3 to after 4, she was attempting to administer that IV. Common sense would tell you, I can't get the IV in. Let me get this child to the nearest hospital. So Dr. Carolina also said at around 4:20, Aquila had a clonic-tonic seizure. That type of seizure is when the body is involved in jerking, as well as, let me read the definition to you guys. So according to WebMD, it says here, clonic-tonic seizure is a type of seizure that involves a loss of consciousness and violent muscle contractions. So according to this report, it's a seizure that affects the muscles. Tonic seizures cause a stiffening of the muscles, while the clonic part of the seizure causes the jerking or the twitching. So you have the jerking, the twitching, and the muscle stiffness. That's what is known as tonoclonic seizures. Some people also call it epilepsy, or it's known as epilepsy, but there's a breakdown of the jerking and the muscle involvement. If you just have the jerking without the muscle stiffness, then it's not clonotonic. But Dr. Carolina said she had clonotonic seizures. So she had, and it lasted for less than a minute, she said. And when a person has a seizure, you're supposed to time it to see how long it lasts. So she said it lasts for less than a minute. The jerking as well as the muscle stiffness. And the report goes on to say that she had a relaxation of the sphincter muscle, which is a muscle that involves swallowing. And I'm saying to myself, I'm wondering if the doctor was making up some parts of her report, because this child was in a stuporous position and condition. She was semi-comatose at this point. She was non-arousal. So the doctor said she couldn't wake her up. So at this point, you would think she would try to get her to the closest hospital, because her gag reflex is not there. She can't gag, she can't cough, she can't gargle, she can't do none of those things to alert you that she is having difficulty breathing. But the doctor insisted that she did have vital signs. Does not mean that this child was able to breathe, because remember, she had a broken neck. When you have a broken neck, your respiratory system is compromised. But the fact that she had a seizure when the doctor was there tells me that she was still alive. So the autopsy report that said she died 15 minutes after the beating, and the doctor got there an hour after the beating, tells me the autopsy report is incorrect when it said 15 minutes after the beating she died, because Shanquella had a seizure when the doctor got there an hour after, and she had that seizure because she was still alive. So then the report said that Winter Donovan, one of the friends, dialed 911 requesting an ambulance. And I'm wondering, was she instructed to dial 911 to get an ambulance out? Did the doctor tell her to dial, or did she do it on her own? Because at this point, it just appears to me as if this doctor was like a rogue doctor. She was just doing whatever the heck she wanted to do. I'm sure when she went to medical school, they told all those doctors in the class, you get that patient to the closest hospital as soon as possible. Work on them until you can get them to a hospital. I'm sure nowhere in that teaching it said, work on them for 3 hours, then call the ambulance. No, when you get there on the scene and you observe that that person is out cold, non-responsive, you call 911 for that ambulance to come and transport that person to the hospital while you work on them. You're supposed to, as a doctor, you go into a home, or in this case a resort, you see this person unresponsive, immediately you dial that 911 for the ambulance to come. But here in America, as soon as they come to the home and see you unresponsive, they put you in that ambulance and they are working on you in the ambulance while they're driving you to the hospital. That's how it's done in America. So it's been reported in the newspapers that officially the friends had said no, do not move her. But when she went into this seizure, this clonotonic seizure, that's when Winter Donovan said, okay, let me call the ambulance. She proceeded to call the ambulance at that point. So the local North Carolina newspaper said that they got this information from a leak audio of the police report there in Mexico. So I'm wondering if Winter Donovan was instructed to call 911 to get that ambulance out there, or did the doctor instruct her to call? Because at this point, I'm scratching my head wondering what took the doctor so long to get that ambulance out to the house, to the resort. So when the ambulance got there, and EMS or the paramedics started to work on her, they said she had decreased pulse and respiratory difficulty. So that tells me she was still alive. So the coroner's report could not have been correct in that 15-minute that she died after the beating. So according to Dr. Carolina Beatrice, she continued CPR until the ambulance got there. And of course, the report says the paramedics administered adrenaline as well as the shocks to the heart to get that heart pumping. It could not be revised, and she was pronounced dead at 5:57 p.m. by the doctor. Now I'm wondering, what was she still doing in that resort villa for almost 3 hours? That is my question. This is why, folks, it's so important for medical professionals to write down the chronological order of events as they're taking place. You are supposed to keep stuff in your head. Okay, at 5:57, and you gotta watch on for a reason, because you're checking your watch as you're doing your CPR. You're checking your watch at the same time. You do not have to stop doing CPR to check that time. As you're pumping, you're glancing at your watch, and you're instructing people of what to do. Go dial 911, get an ambulance, run get this, run get that, while you continue your CPR. Okay, and you got to bear in mind the time. Because when that coroner come out to pronounce that body or to take that body, they need to fill in that report based on what you tell them. The time of death is based on what you tell them. Okay? When that person had that seizure, what time did you arrive? What time did you start CPR? What time did you stop? What time, everything has to be in the report. So you have to know the time. And that's another reason why there's so much discrepancy right now, because the times are not adding up. It's not making sense. Not even with the coroner, when they put down at 15 minutes after the beating, she passed away. How could that be when the doctor was working on her an hour after the beating and said she had respiration, she had vital signs? So after Dr. Carolina Beatrice pronounced Shanquella dead at 5:57 p.m., that's when the two police officers on the scene decided to call Julia Daniels, and that was 6:35 p.m. And even that was delayed because that's a whole half an hour after the doctor pronounced her dead. So they call this agent from the public ministry to let him know that a foreigner just died in the country, a vacationer. And then he proceeded to go down there. So he is the person, this Julia Daniel, he's the person from the municipal department who is also currently under investigation. He's part of the 4 people who are being investigated right now for not reporting, omission. So you guys see how things are not adding up. The coroner's office that did the autopsy in Mexico said she died 15 minutes after the beating or her injuries. And the doctor, Dr. Carolina Beatrice, said she died 2.5 hours after she got there, and she was working on her. That's when she died at 5:57 p.m. So that's a huge discrepancy, folks. So the official police report have all 4 of these individuals as lying, and they're under investigation as I speak. So here's the thing, folks. I'm wondering who got paid by whom, because for these officials to keep quiet, money must have changed hands. But who paid them? Was it the resort, or was it the 6 people who came back, the 6 friends? Who paid these folks to keep quiet and falsify the report when it was clear that this child did not have alcohol on her breath? She had a beating. It was clear to see that she had a busted lip, black eye, and contusion, abrasion on her head or forehead, bruises all over her body. Police officers saw it, the doctors saw it, but yet they did not put it in their report. And this is all alleged. Now I can't help but wonder how many deaths were not correct in the reporting. If I were you guys out there in YouTube land, if you had a person who died in anywhere in Mexico, look deep into it, because it may not be what you think it is. It might have been a cover-up. And this is a message for the person who released the tape of the beating. I believe it must have been one of the friends, because who else had the recorded beating? It was none other than the friend. So thank you for releasing that. At least you got a conscience. So YouTubers, you're welcome to weigh in on this conversation. I'd love to hear your comments, what you think about this story so far as the information trickles out. What are your thoughts? I'm over and out. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to my channel and to this video. Thank you for watching.